Hello and welcome to the Cyber Den, your weekly dose of tech and games. I, Jake, will be chatting with professional voiceover artist Rick Hunter, better known as the voice of the Postal Dude from the controversial cult classic Postal series. Thanks for coming, mate.
How you doing?
Pretty good myself. All's well in the Cyber Den as usual.
Yeah, down here in Arizona, it's pretty warm this time of year, dead of winter, and we're at about 75 degrees, so time to crank on the AC.
Rightio then. Now, Rick, please tell everyone listening what inspired you to enter the world of voiceovers and voice acting.
You know, it was real funny. I was 16 years old, and my dad had moved. I was in my senior year of high school, and, ripped away from all my friends, the high school. It was kind of a bummer. And I saw this ad in the paper, a small little AM radio station wanted a part-time announcer. Didn't have a bit of experience, but applied for it, and my voice when I was 16 sounded the way it did now, and got the job, and it started from there. Just started doing voiceover work. Once I was, 2 or 3 years into radio, always was, intrigued by it, and, just kind of went from there.
Let's talk about Postal then. Let's dive right into the deep end. Now, for those who don't know, the first Postal game had players take control of the Postal Dude in order to gun down anyone they saw fit. If they're going to go for the civilians, but so be it. If you're just going to shoot the bad guys who are actually trying to shoot you first, you can. Your choice. So, how did you get the role for the game, and what was your reaction when you were first pitched said role?
They were looking for somebody to play the voice of the Postal Dude, and an associate of mine was the engineer on it. Now he's produced stuff for, the Spice Girls. I think his name was Christian Salyer. I don't know if that's his real name. But he asked me if I'd be interested in doing some voice work for him. So I went down, did some auditions, and they said they wanted me to do the rest of it. So, it kind of went from there. And I was never into the game at first, and then I heard how well it did, and then we did Postal II. And at that time, I knew it was, it was a pretty big game, so we spent a little bit more time on the voice part of it. But, on both voiceover sessions for Postal 1 and Postal 2, it only took, for each game, about 3-4 hours.
Well, that quick.
It was pretty quick. And the guy, Mike is great, Vince is great, and they just, basically say, do your thing. And they weren't being over picky about it. And we did a lot of takes, and, it turned out pretty well.
That's good to hear. Not so good to hear was the fact that the game was pretty controversial, and that's an understatement, both before and after its release in the mid-90s. So, did you pay attention to the controversy, and did it affect you in any way?
No, not really. I mean, I heard some things about it, but, nowadays, what isn't controversial? It just gets into the world of being subjective. I mean, especially what's going on in this country now, what's right, what's wrong. I mean, it's like whatever. We did the game, and I think that when you create controversy, it sells more. And in some sort of sense, I think that's why they did some of the things they did in the game, and it worked.
I'd just like to add, in case there are any American listeners tuning into this interview, we apologize if anything we just said was offensive somehow, some way, if we offended your family, your dog, or anything like that, because, I've heard things, and we don't want to step on anyone's toes.
No, we all have to have our safe spaces, if you say something, I'm going to go hide in my closet. That's my safe space in this country.
The first and second entries in the Postal series, radically different from the eerie and creepy top-down shooter that was the first game, to the darkly humorous, overly offensive first-person free roamer that we got with Postal 2. Side note, for anyone who hasn't played it, A, play it. B, it features some pretty balmy stuff, such as cats as silencers for guns, terrorists, and the ability to shoot, chop, zap, and pretty much tinkle on anyone you saw fit. So, again, what was your reaction to this polarizing change in tone?
It was different because they wanted a different style on the first one. It was more of a demonic in your head voice, and the second one was, completely different. It's so funny because, and you have to understand, doing a lot of voice acting, you do this stuff and you forget about it until you hear about it later on. And with me going back and looking at the stuff on the Postal game, I didn't necessarily play it. I just went online and looked at people recording it and playing it, and it was like, oh, gee, this is pretty cool. But the cat on the shotgun, it's like, oh, okay, we're pushing the envelope here. But like I said, it's Vince and Mike did that on purpose, and it is what it is. I found it interesting.
I heard that they're both cat people, so apparently that's the reason why they chose cats of all things as a gun silencer.
I'm not a cat person. I'm a dog person. I have a Rottweiler, and so I can't even relate to cats.
Likewise, my friend, likewise.
I
Labrador.
probably wouldn't have done the gun if they would have done that with a Rottweiler, but then you put the Rottweiler at the end of a shotgun, I don't think you could pick it up.
Too right. Also, cruelty against dogs, that's not territory I
Cats,
enter.
whatever. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so do you enjoy voicing the Postal Dude? And if so, were there any particular lines of dialogue that were your favorites?
Not really. I don't mean not really. I like doing the project. It was something different. In the voiceover world, you do so many different things. Like I do a lot of TV stations, and it's very serious. And then I do a lot of dramatic reads for like narration, and it's more light and narrating things. I mean, voice acting, that's what it is. You go back and forth doing different things and try to sound 100% different. So doing this project, and usually it was done, on the weekends, except for Paradise Lost. I did that in the studio here, and I don't know. I probably had the best time doing the Postal II because we were doing it out of somebody's home studio that was pretty elaborate. It was fun. It was done in the middle of the day, and we had a good time doing that.
Do you look back at your performance fondly in both the first and second game?
I'll be perfectly honest with you. The Postal Dude voice, it's not the best kind of work I do. It's kind of a put-on voice. It's not my, I wouldn't call it me at my most professional. It was just a fun thing to do.
Just that kind of sort of goofy voice that you like to put on every now and again.
Kind of a goofy voice. It's not the kind of voice I would use on everyday things. I mean, most of the commercial voiceovers that I do, they wouldn't put up with that kind of a voice. It's more, kind of sarcastic and what the hell are you doing type of thing. I can't explain it. It was just kind of, we got in the studio and that was the kind of voice they wanted.
Now, Postal 2 is a definite fan favourite, but Postal 3, not so much. That got dubbed as one of the worst games ever made. For those who don't know, developer issues, let's just leave it at that. You ended up dropping the role while the game was in development. Why so?
Okay, there's a lot of controversy about that, and there's a lot of people typing lies about that. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. What had happened during that time, I went through a major breakup with a girl, and it was a bad time, and I dropped out of a lot of things. It had nothing to do with Mike. It had nothing to do with Vince. They kept calling me, but I was in just kind of in a weird state of existence during that time, and that's when a fellow colleague here in town, who's a good friend of mine, Corey Cruz, they picked him up to do the Postal 3 voice, and a lot of people didn't like it. I like Corey. I like his voice. I think he sounds great. I think he did a great job. And him and I worked on Postal 2 Paradise together in the studio. And like I said, a lot of people, well, Rick didn't like the look of Postal 3. I didn't even see the look of Postal 3. That had nothing to do with it. It was just a really bad time in my life. And honestly, I did Vince and Mike wrong on that, but it was something I was going through, so I really couldn't help it.
It's good to hear that you enjoyed Corey's performance. I quite liked it myself. I warmed up to it pretty quick, and it was great to hear both the original Postal Dude and the Postal 3 version of the Dude both together in the expansion pack.
Oh, yeah, it was a fun thing to do. And like I said, Corey and I are good friends. We have lunch all the time, and, we do a lot of voiceover work together. So it was, and when I heard that they had chosen him, after the fact, he was like, no, that's cool. Glad he got some work.
After that 10-year wait, you mentioned about, of course, with Postal 2, Paradise Lost, 10 plus years since you played the role of the Postal Dude. How did you feel about reprising the role after so long?
Oh, I didn't mind it at all. I mean, they came down, they said, hey, we'd like you to do this. Do you mind doing it? And I was like, that sounds like a fun project again. That was a fun afternoon that we had doing Postal 2. So, and this time during this one, there was a lot more work to do. I don't know why, but I think they were writing it as they went. So Mike had come to the studio and, how about this? How about that? He brought a lot of other, different voice actors down, and we did all the recordings in my studio. And I think that was a lot better too, because we did my voice for Postal 2 at that studio, and then there was other studios being used. I think there was a consistency issue, but it was all consistent, and it took a lot longer to do. But it was fun. I like doing it. And Mike had just texted me recently, and apparently there's some project he's doing again that he wants to use my voice on. And it's like, cool. The problem with that is if it's not a Postal Dude voice, I'm going to have to come up with something completely different so it's not recognizable.
And Mike, if you are listening, there is a certain voice actor that you could use for said project. What was his name again? Jay the Voice? Something like that.
Jake the Voice. I'm going to have to use you too.
Maybe so. That's not a bad idea. So, anyway, of course, you've done your fair share of voice acting and voice work outside from the world of video games. Any that stand out to you?
Not really. I mean, my favorite stuff to do is it's more of a monetary issue, is TV voiceover work. In other words, you're the station voice for a specific TV station, and you do their news intros and, Channel 5, News at 5 with so-and-so. That kind of stuff's fun, and it doesn't require a lot of work, and it's all retainer-based. And I tend to like to do that, and I like to work with different people around the country, doing sessions with them. So, like I said, it's all subjective, but the variety is what makes the big difference. You can do this hardcore read and then maybe do a movie trailer type read and something else. It's a fun way to make a living, and it's not difficult. And believe me, I'm not the best there is out there. Some of my friends in the voiceover business, for instance, one of my close friends, Jeff Lawrence, brilliant voice actor, does stuff for a lot of the networks, HBO, Cinemax, Showtime, and he'll throw me cookies once in a while, but no, like I said, it's such a different world if you're in a full time. And a lot of guys, there's a lot of guys out there that make 1,000 times more than I do off of it, and they do well, but they're more stressed out. I just prefer to take on the work that doesn't stress me out.
Pretty good advice right there for any voice actors wanting to know how to get into the biz. Don't go for the stressful stuff.
It's and that's something I get all the time. Is how do you get in the voiceover business? It's it's kind of like it's very difficult. More or less, it's who you know. That's where my success has been, is contacts. They're looking for a certain person. They happen to know you. You work with them. You work with a lot of producers. And one of my biggest pieces of advice when I first started out is a lot of people send demos off to advertising agencies, TV, radio stations. A lot of times those aren't the guys that are picking the high-end work. I started sending my demos off to commercial recording studios because a lot of times those guys behind the boards, the engineers, the agencies are so busy, they'll say, hey, go find me something. So I started out, just saying, okay, I'm going to start in Texas commercial recording studios, Googling it, and I sent off 5 demos. I got a hit the first time. It was with the guy, Digital Base in Texas, and they handle a lot of work for some of the major advertising agencies in the country, and they're so busy, they just said, find us a voice.
Also, bonus advice for any voice actors out there, for love of God, if you're going to send a demo reel, make it 1 minute long. I've heard my fair share of, say, with lack of a more polite term, more bloated reels. To be honest, I'll admit that early ground with my voice acting, I made some pretty bad demo reels. to be exact, Rick, I made 4 awful demo reels.
The whole thing about demo reels, and it's so true because I'm in the position a lot of times where I need to find voiceover people for clients also, and not my own voice. You better make the first 5 to 10 seconds the best, because I'll listen to demos and I'll listen to 5 or 10 seconds of it, and I'm done. And basically during that, I don't know, let's say the first 15 seconds, make sure that the first cut and the second cut, the variety is completely different. Because a lot of times you're looking for somebody that's flexible. Because if I'm going to work with somebody and in a voiceover session, I want to make sure that they're flexible and they can take direction. And usually, if you can show that in the first 15 seconds of the demo, you're the guy.
Now, I've done a bit of research trying to look into all the other projects that you've likely done, but to be honest, it's pretty difficult. All I can seem to find is the Postal games and some of the news pieces that you mentioned you voiced in. How come you're such an enigma? Is there any particular reason for that?
Because right now I'm so honestly busy with voiceover work. Years ago, I had a website and I got so busy doing it, I just took it down. And I have a core list of clients right now, and I'm really not taking a lot of new stuff in. If there's stuff that comes in here and there, I'll do it. But I'm not big into sending demos out anymore. I've got it pretty locked down. And the TV stations that I have, that keeps me busy enough, and the stuff on the side with consistent clients. So I'm not really demo-driven right now. Maybe I should be. Years ago, when I first started doing voiceover work, I was taking on everything, and I was stressing myself out. So I just kind of, take it as it comes, and the consistent clients I have, it pays the bills, does well, and, it is what it is.
Now, before we round off this interview, Rick, is there anything you'd like to share to the many twisted Postal fans out there who love your performance and love your voice?
Not really. I'm glad they play the game. I'm glad they like it because, I don't know if I listen to my voice. If I was out there, I'd go, this guy sucks. But I'm glad they like it, and it's cool. It was a fun project to do. And I've talked to a lot of people that have sent me messages on the YouTube channel that I have my stuff up on. And they're really cool. A lot of them are really dedicated to it. So, I've played the game personally, maybe 2 or 3 times. I used to be a big gamer when I was a kid. I just got so busy doing the voiceover work and my own career that it's hard for me to get that learning curve down because I get frustrated and mad if I can't win a game. I'm one of those guys that when I did play, Xbox, I'd get all the codes to where you could cheat your way out of it and be invincible and just kill everything.
You filthy casual, Rick.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to lose,
Well, at least you're honest. Rick, thank you so much for coming to this interview.
No problem at all. Anytime. It was fun.
And I'd also like to thank my wonderful listeners out there for tuning into this great interview on the Cyber Den, your weekly dose of tech and games. See you, Rick, and let me just say, I regret nothing.
I don't either. So I had fun doing it, so I regret nothing.